This is the NNG UX podcast.
I'm Laura Klein. You may know Christina Wodtke from her best-selling books Radical Focus, The Team That Managed Itself, and Pencil Me In. Christina is a core lecturer in HCI at Stanford University, and she works with companies to help them work out their strategy and build better products. In this episode, I talk with Christina about Radical Focus. We dive into the methodology of objectives and key results, and she explains a little bit about how to get them right and where almost everybody goes wrong. We also chat a bit about game design and designing for behavior change. If you're interested in hands-on learning about how to set better objectives for your products, I encourage you to check out the NNG live training courses. We have classes on product and UX, lean and agile design, and product strategy. And with that, let's talk to Christina Wodtke. Welcome, Christina Wodtke, author of Radical Focus. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
I'm so excited to talk to you, Laura.
Even about OKRs, which I know are not your favorite thing to talk about on podcasts, maybe?
Let's just say I've done a lot of talking about OKRs on podcasts.
Yeah, I will try to ask new and interesting questions, and I will almost certainly fail and will ask you the same dumb questions that you have to answer every single time. But rest assured that you are helping people. That's the important thing.
Well, so. I'm a mother and I'm a teacher and I have a dog, so I'm used to repeating myself.
There you go. That's those, it's an underutilized skill and very important. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Radical Focus because I'm seeing, was it actually published in 2014?
I know, it's crazy, right? I was very early. I was before Measure What Matters, believe it or not.
Yeah, and better than Measure What Matters. But we're not comparing things. Comparison is the thief of joy. Yeah, I remember reading that when you first wrote it. And why did you decide to write it in the first place?
Oh, goodness. Well, part of it was I had hoped that I would not have to repeat myself over and over again. And instead I could say, just go read this book. That hasn't really worked out.
I was going to say, how'd that go for you? About as well as it goes for the rest of us authors who just then get asked about it for the rest of our lives?
Pretty much. That's the way it works. But also, I wanted to write another book. I hadn't written a book in like 10 years. And I thought, I feel like writing another book. And I did it. I wanted to do something like Patrick Lencioni's books, which I enjoy tremendously, where I write a story. I was like, this is fun. It's like putting my toe into the fiction bathtub. And I decided so I had the story to explain things, and then I have the nonfiction in the second half where I go into best practices and worst practices.
Yeah, no, I really appreciated that about the book. I very much enjoyed it, as you probably know. I'm a big fan of fiction, especially if it has dragons in it, which yours sadly does not. But even without the dragons, it's very easy to follow and understand the story, and I really do think that it helps you get a lot out of it about what OKRs are. But for the folks who haven't read it, can you give me like the high level quick overview of what is an OKR and why?
An OKR is a goal setting methodology that you use when you want to create change. So it is a statement of what you're trying to do and how you're going to measure success. And it's a methodology. Like people ask me often, what's the difference between a KPI and an OKR? And KPIs are something you measure, or even what you try to go, but there's no methodology that goes with it. OKRs have the rhythm. It has the Monday commitment meeting and the Friday celebration meeting, and how to do status emails around it. It's a nice little, I guess it's like a mini methodology, a mini framework, very lightweight. I've always been a startup person and I work a lot with startups. So they don't have a lot of patience for too much process. And so I made it as small as possible, but no smaller.
Yeah. No, it's true. So it's got those sort of like little rituals and incantations, has been sort of added on to Agile, that I do think those help to make it more of a thing, right? It makes it more of a regular thing. And that does matter a lot for OKRs.
It matters hugely. People are always setting goals and then completely forgetting about them. So
I'm feeling very attacked here, Christina. I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, go on.
It happens all the time. People spend like all these hours in meeting rooms arguing and covering the whiteboard with scribbles and saying, okay, what are our goals really? And then they leave the room and it's like it never happened, because life has a way of throwing shiny objects at us. There's always this person needs this report and this client needs this and this customer needs that, all that stuff. And so OKRs remind you of what really matters. And it's pretty good. It's a pretty good little system.
Yeah, that the arguing about it and then forgetting about it reminds me of every annual planning strategy and annual roadmap that I have ever seen, where like the next year they're like, okay, what did we do with the roadmap? Oh, we got 10% of it done. Well, okay, let's go through the same process this year. I'm sure it'll be different this time, Christina.
Absolutely. Everything's new again in the new year. No, you know better. It's ridiculous. And I think that's one of the most important things is how do you have things you care about? How do you keep them in front of you? And sometimes you do consciously, you're supposed to change. You don't want to make a plan and feel trapped by it. You got to be a little bit flexible, which is why I like the quarterly rhythm of the OKR. It's long enough to get something done and short enough that you can step back, say, what's going on here? Do we need to pivot? Do we need to persevere? It's a good amount of time for people, I think.
Yeah. And then I know that you also advocate for not just doing it quarterly, but also checking in. You mentioned every week. Tell me a little bit about those sort of weekly rituals as well.
Oh, I find so there's this concept that I really love, which is called temporal landmarks. Mm-hmm. And a temporal landmark is something like New Year's or your birthday, where you stop in time and you go, oh, what am I doing with my life? Or God, I'm getting old, or whatever. And in companies, a temporal landmark are quarterly because you have quarterly business, goals and quarterly business reports. And then weekly is another temporal mark. So every Monday I think of as a new year, where you could say, okay, what are we trying to do? Remember, and what are we going to do towards that goal? And then Friday is another temporal landmark where we have celebrations. And celebrations are really important with OKRs because OKRs are supposed to be stretch goals. They're always stretch goals. Sometimes people talk about this thing called committed OKRs and stretch OKRs or whatever. And every time you add complexity, I think methodology is less likely to work. So I'm really against it. I'd rather just have OKRs are always stretch goals. And then that's depressing if you can't make progress. So the celebrations remind you that you did make progress, that you did do something. They also kind of hold people accountable because if you don't have anything to celebrate on Friday, what did you do with your week? And
what happened there? Yeah, exactly.
We have to wonder.
Yeah.
So there are a little bit of an accountability as well as celebrating. And it also makes you feel like you're part of something special when you're out with your group and maybe you're having some beers on Friday or cake or whatever, or have you, you're listening to people brag and you're like, wow, these people, they're so amazing. I'm so happy to be part of this. So I had one CEO who wanted to do OKRs. It was the middle of the quarter and I suggested he wait till the beginning of the quarter. But he started the celebrations and he said it made a huge difference. Just adding celebrations to the weekly rhythm made everything better. It's nice.
Yeah. Again, I'm sort of reminded of, demo day at the end of every sprint.
Built on demo day.
Yeah. Where you get to sort of actually see what was accomplished and brag a little bit. And also there's an excuse to talk about, again, why it isn't going as well as you expected. The goal there isn't right to hit a OKR every single week, right? It's to make tangible progress.
Progress. And the thing, I was raised in Agile as much of my tech career was, I've only worked at Agile companies. And that means nothing, but
right. You were raised at companies that say that they're doing Agile. That's what that means. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I never knew why demo day was only for the devs. Like why
it shouldn't be.
Yeah. Right? Why can't the designers show what they're up to? Why can't the business people show what they're doing or marketing? It seems like a chance to celebrate everybody. I think it helps break down silos as well.
Yeah. They should absolutely be involved in all of these, right? Like having everybody at those meetings, at least, even if you're not the one presenting, it at least gives you the chance to understand what other people are doing and chime in. If you're seeing an OKR go sideways.
Yes, exactly.
This is your chance to step in and do something about it and fix it.
Yeah. And I get it that bigger companies have a harder time with this and they have come up with very interesting solutions. Like each group only gets to show brag about one thing they did as opposed to list their 14 accomplishments, or let remote teams post things in Slack and do a little video call. There are different ways to handle it, but I think the important thing is recognizing that you're making progress and that things are actually moving forward in a positive way.
Do you feel like there are teams that are better at this than others? Like any sort of specific things that are about the team themselves that make it better or worse?
It's definitely personalities. I mean, teams have personalities often set by the leader, and I think it's really important that the manager be there for the celebration. And some people are like, no, we're too busy. I don't get the point of this. And that's unfortunate, because it's really important as a manager to suck it up and do things that you don't want to, because you're taking care of the team.
Once again, Christina, feeling very attacked as somebody who has been a manager. But yes, I agree. Not all of it is just getting to order people around. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying none of it's ordering people around.
Does this mean that they're also going to have to read your other book, The Team That Managed Itself, to learn about management?
Wouldn't mind if you read the other one. It's also a story. You can survive a story.
That's true. If I'm just telling you, if you put some dragons in it.
But we are laughing, but it really is a problem, because a lot of managers do think their job is ordering people around. And the whole point of an OKR is you set the goal and you let your people figure out how to get to that goal, which means you have to hire very well and you have to give feedback and get rid of people who are substandard. And it can be hard to do if you don't have a high-performing team, admittedly.
You also have to be in the kind of organization that doesn't every couple of weeks step in and go, hey, we're changing direction. We need you to sprinkle some AI on it. Or, hey, I need a vision design for this thing that you've never heard of or seen. Not that, I'm sorry, I'm just trauma dumping on you, but.
Absolutely. I mean, I hear this all the time when I work with clients. It's they're like, how do we get people to stop being crazy above us? And I'm like,
if I knew that, I would be a witch. If I knew that, if I knew that, I'd be a billionaire.
Learning how to coach up is a skill all by itself.
Yeah. Is that going to be your next book?
Maybe. It's possible.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to that. I have to ask my very favorite question about this. What are some of the things, I'm not going to ask you to name just one because I know it's impossible to choose, but what are some of the things that you see people just get horribly, horribly wrong about OKRs?
Oh my God. Okay. How much time do we have?
Just keep talking and I'll interrupt you. I'll just cut you off when we're at time.
No, I don't want to list too many things. One thing I learned with teaching is if I gave my students detailed feedback, they didn't listen to me at all to speak of. And if I just said, I need you to change these 3 things, then they would do all 3 things. So I've learned over time that feedback is better in smaller quantities. So some things that go wrong. Well, set and forget, we already covered. That's the classic one. Mm-hmm. So I'd say skipping the ritual meetings, the Monday commitments, mm-hmm. and the Friday celebrations. I think those both are really, really important, and they can be combined with other meetings, so you don't have to stand alone. I think another big one is people struggle, especially if they haven't been metrics driven. Mm-hmm. They're afraid to put a number out there. Like in OKR, you've got your objective, which is the thing you're trying to do, and then you have the success metrics. And a lot of times people are afraid to guess. And you can become really good at having accurate guesses if you practice at it. And the manager is really important here, because the manager needs to not hold people to their guesses. He has to respect the guesses as what they are, their guesses. Yeah. Otherwise, you get people sandbagging their numbers. But if you genuinely create a safe space for people to make a guess, encourage them. And it's weird, but it's one of the single most common problems I run into when I'm working with organizations is that they're sort of been beaten down by the organization, where they're afraid to be brave and do anything, and that they're going to be punished if they don't do it right. And that's another problem. Managers need to not punish people when they do things right. They need to educate. They need to coach. That's how you grow people. That's how you grow organizational knowledge. And so that's a big one. I mean, psychological safety is so important, and I would recommend The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson. Every manager should be forced to read it. I would lock them in a room with the book and not let them out until they'd read the whole thing.
I will ask though, you said two things there that I want to dig in a little bit because it's something that is near and dear to my heart. You're going to see why in a minute. You mentioned, the psychological safety, we can't punish people for being wrong, but you also mentioned getting better at making these, guesses really, or predictions. And one of the things that I see on teams is that people suck at making those predictions and often don't get better. And how do we get them to improve? Because I see over and over people, often the same people, saying, this is going to improve our metrics by 100%, da, da, da. And then it improves it by like 0.25%, or not at all, or it's, they're like, oh, well, A/B test it, and I'm sure that this one will do great. And they're equal. And I mean, as we all know, if you're doing an A/B test and they're equal, you failed because you spent all that time to get nothing. So yeah. Anyway, how do we get people to get better at this? Because that seems like such an important skill, to not be wildly overestimating how important the thing that you're working on is.
Yeah, there will always be some people who won't learn. It's just a fact of life. But let's assume that most people are capable of learning, at which point it's really important to go back to the A/B test when it turns out wrong and say, okay, this was wrong. Why was it wrong? I think that there's very little retrospectives done. And I think retrospectives are one of the single most powerful things you can do, which is why at the end of every quarter, you should be doing a retrospective on your OKRs. It's absolutely critical. So we call it grading OKRs. But really, it's about what worked and what didn't work and why. Why is the key thing. And it creates a self-reflectiveness, big word I just made up. That will help create learning. And there's lots and lots and lots of papers on this, and it does work. There's a really simple formula that works pretty well, which is, what did I think before I started this project or this A/B test? What actually happened? What do I think now? What would I do next time? And that rhythm of writing that down on paper will make a big difference to your ability to learn. And I think it's really critical to think about learning as the goal. So the people who had two things and they tested it and they turned out equal did not fail. They learned, don't do that. That's what they're actually aiming for.
As long as you learn, don't do that. I think that's very much the key here, is that you have to then be able to apply those lessons to other things.
Absolutely.
You mentioned one of the things that, again, I'm very interested in is the writing down, why did I believe this thing that I believed? Because I think over time, when you start doing that, you really start tracking that.
Oh yeah.
Boy, do you see over time the kinds of things that contribute to good guesses and the kinds of things that contribute to bad guesses.
Absolutely. When people talk about product sense, what they're really talking about is this. We're talking about, through your experience with working with products and finding out what works and what doesn't, you develop product sense. And it's really funny for me because I've got all these young Stanford students going, how do I get product sense? And I'm like, get older.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pay attention.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. I do what I can for them. I feel like you can build an exercise in product sense by going on products and trying to figure out who's going to be successful. You know, if you think it's a very smooth interface or it's a very pleasant experience, and then see, are they growing their users or not? You can start doing it with third-party websites, but it's or apps. It's hard though.
That's hard because you don't know all the other things that are going into it, right? Yep. User research and usability testing specifically helps so much at that. People talk about, well, a lot of people talk about product sense like it's this thing that you're born with or you're not. Like, you're just good at products. You just have a good gut feeling for it. I'm like, no, like I believed a thing to be true. I tested it. I was wrong. I figured out what went into my belief in that, and I corrected that part of it. The part where I'm like, believing what my gut tells me when my gut is, I don't know, it's probably just hungry. It doesn't know anything about products. Yeah.
Product people should sit in on user research and participate in it as much as possible, even though you'd rather just read the report and it's slow and boring. What you're doing is you're taking care of your brain. You watch it and you'll hear what they say. Sometimes you'll even notice something that maybe the researcher didn't notice, and you can ask about that. It's it's one of the best uses of your time.
Yeah.
It is not a waste of time.
I never think it's slow and boring. I will say it is occasionally extremely painful.
Yes, it's always like usability testing in particular can be agonizingly painful. And you're like, the button's right there.
What have I done to these people? Yeah. Well, and it's amazing. It just really shows you what you did not expect.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we have jumped around a lot. I want to jump to something entirely different, which is that background. I know you are actually in your office, and I am seeing a lot of really fun games. So it looks like you're kind of into games.
A little bit. I teach game design here at Stanford, as well as UX and product management. I'm kind of all over the place these days. I have the product management class. I have UX class, design for behavior change. I have two game design classes. One is sort of an introductory course for game design. The other one is serious games, which is all about games that do things like educate, create empathy. I'm just very passionate about games, and it's weird to be in CS with all these board games. But board games are like little tiny machines. I really like them.
Well, and it's funny because you say that, you teach design for behavior change, and that also you teach serious games. And I don't know, that feels like it's not the same class, but it feels like it's highly related.
Highly related indeed.
So tell me, what are you up to these days?
Well, I mostly teach. I have a full-time job here at Stanford teaching students, but they have a reasonable definition of free time, like 40 hours a week. Mm-hmm. So in my spare time, I usually have at least one client I'm coaching. My latest one just graduated, so I guess I have a slot open now. And I write books, obviously, since I have a pathological need to write books, apparently. But I'm writing one right now that is very different. I'm writing pure fiction, urban fantasy, in fact. And I was just working on it this morning, and I'm pretty excited by it. Maybe some people who want something that's not UX might try out my book. Who knows?
All right. Well, are you going to be writing anything that is, UX or product?
Yes, I have one that's about strategy. So I feel like strategy is one of those words that people say it, nobody knows what it means. And I'm like, could I write something that was simple, clear, and actionable? But it's also kind of a book that a lot of other people have written books about. So I'm not sure if I have something to say to that or not. So I'm kind of fiddling around in that space.
It does feel, though, like it ties in very well with the OKR side of things, because you can't have objectives without strategy.
Yeah, I wrote The Team That Managed Itself because people read my Radical Focus, and then they would be like, so if you can't use OKRs to do performance reviews, how do you do performance reviews? And I was like, are you kidding me? Okay. And I kept hearing it, and I was like, let me write a book that explains how to manage people, in this, and also in this sort of non-management way where you're setting goals and you're just giving feedback. It's sort of like being a combination of setting goals and coaching, which I'm a big fan of. So you're right. I mean, before you can do an OKR, you need to have a mission and a mission that's good, I should say, a vision. Where are you going? Who are you is the mission. Where are you going is the vision. And then the strategy is how we're going to get there. And you need those things. And then the OKRs can be, okay, what are we doing this quarter to get to our goal, to fulfill our vision?
Yep. That's how we teach it here in my product and UX class. So I'm glad to hear that I'm not handing out anything that's not Christina Wodtke approved. So, Stamp. Okay. All right. Good. Everybody hear that? I've got the Christina Wodtke approval on how I teach that. Fantastic. Where can people go if they want to find out more about any of your upcoming books, classes, coaching slots, etc., games?
I have been writing at Elegant Hack for 25 years now, which is really terrifying. My first post was in 2000. So it's a very ancient blog. I wrote it because originally I called myself Elegant Hack because I was talking to my boss, and this is back when I was a front-end coder. And I remember she said, Christina, there are skanky hacks and there are elegant hacks. And if you're going to make a hack, I want an elegant hack. And I thought, that's a great domain name. And now that I'm a writer, it's doubly resonant.
Oh, I love that. All right. So they can follow you on Elegant Hack. You also hang out on LinkedIn a little bit, right?
By hang out,
I mean argue with people who are wrong on the internet.
and post every 10 minutes sometimes
Yeah.
if I'm procrastinating.
I mean, you put some pretty useful stuff up there. That's a bit of a it's a nice counterbalance to some of the other things that are maybe on there.
Well, I finally gave in and realized AI is a thing that is going to be part of our lives about a year ago, and went into a big deep dive. So there's a lot there trying to make sense. Like, you got your boosters, people who are nuts, and they're like, it's the next thing, you're already behind, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got the people who are like, it's the end of the world, we're all doomed. And I'm like, what if we treat it like technology? So
what if it's just like everything else? Yeah, it's good for some things and not for others.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the web changed the world profoundly, deeply, and completely. And AI might do that. But for right now, I think we should talk about what is it and how does it work and what are we going to do? I'm not writing a book about AI, though, because I can't write that fast. It's changing too quickly.
Books also feel like kind of the wrong way to talk about AI to a certain extent. Just as you point out, by the time you get it published,
everything will be different.
It's already out of date. Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's true. The pace of AI is mind blowing.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll probably get updates you'll probably get a lot of AI. If you hate AI, you probably should follow me. And if you want to know when I write books or when I write blogs or when I hold classes, I have a nice OKR class that I do every so often. Just sign up in my newsletter, also at I'll Get Hack.
All right. Well, there you go. Thank you so much, Christina. This has been wonderful. Thank you for telling us about OKRs. Hopefully this is the last time you'll ever have to talk about it. Because I know you wrote the book. I can't do the math, 11 years ago, and you were hoping that was going to be the last time. But maybe I think this is the one that's going to do it.
I think so.
This is it.
Everybody will come and listen to this one, and then I will never have to talk about it again. Although I don't mind if I'm paid to talk about it.
Oh, good point. All right. Well, everybody spread the word that this is the final free talk on OKRs that Christina's ever going to get.
100%.
So,
excellent.
All right. Thank you again for coming. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you, Laura. Bye.
That was Christina Wodtke, author of Radical Focus, The Team That Managed Itself, and Pencil Me In. You can and should follow her on LinkedIn or check out her blog, Elegant Hack, where she's been sharing wisdom about product and design since the year 2000. If you'd like to keep up with all of our new episodes here at NNG, make sure to follow us on the podcast platform of your choice and consider signing up for our weekly newsletter, where we share the latest UX research and practical advice for practitioners just like you. Go to nngroup.com to learn more. This show was hosted by me, Laura Klein, with the invaluable help of executive producer Therese Fessenden. That's it for today's show. Until next time, don't forget, keep it simple.